The funeral flowers hadn't even withered before my mother shoved me into the parking lot outside the law firm. "You don't belong here, Sarah," she sneered, locking arms with my golden child brother. "Grandma's legacy is for family, not black sheep." I stood frozen on the pavement, watching them walk inside to claim an estate worth millions. But just as the heavy oak doors were about to slam shut, a sharp voice echoed down the hall. Mr. Vance, Grandma's lifelong attorney, stepped into the doorway, his eyes cold as ice as he locked gaze with my mother. "Step back, Eleanor," he said, his voice cutting through the lobby like a blade. "She stays. In fact, without her in this room, none of you get a single cent. Welcome back to BT Revenge Tales. Comment your city below so I can see our global reach. My name is Sarah. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been a ghost to my own family. My mother, Eleanor, erased me the moment I refused to take the fall for my older brother Julian's massive financial fraud. Julian was always the golden child, the golden boy who could commit a crime, and somehow my mother would find a way to blame me for it. When I packed my bags and left, Eleanor made sure the rest of our relatives treated me like a traitor. The only person who refused to abandon me was my grandmother. While my mother and Julian only visited her to slide handwritten checks into her purse, Grandma and I shared quiet Sunday teas, genuine laughter, and unconditional love. She saw right through their polished greed. Deep down, I knew she was planning something, but I never expected the storm that was waiting for us on the morning of our will reading. Standing outside that marble office, I was about to find out just how far my mother would go to destroy me. The morning of the will reading was gray and suffocating. Heavy raindrops splashed against the glass facade of the downtown law firm where my grandmother had kept her accounts for 40 years. I stood on the damp sidewalk, pulling my black coat tightly around myself, trying to build the courage to walk through those heavy glass doors. Before my foot even hit the polished stone steps, my mother appeared out of nowhere, cutting me off. Eleanor looked immaculate in her designer funeral black, her diamond earrings catching the light, but her eyes were cold venom. Julian stood right behind her, a smug, arrogant smirk playing on his lips. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" Eleanor hissed, stepping directly into my personal space and blocking the entrance. "You have no right to show your face here after abandoning this family. This meeting is for legitimate heirs only. Leave right now before I have security throw you onto the pavement like the trash you are." Julian stepped forward, eager to join in on my mother's cruelty. "You heard Mom, Sarah," he sneered, grabbing my arm to force me down the stone steps. "Get lost. Take your hands off her." The commanding voice echoed through the grand lobby. We all froze. Standing in the towering doorway of the law office was Mr. Vance, my grandmother's lifelong attorney. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his stern gray eyes locked onto my mother, cutting her down where she stood. "Step back, Eleanor," Mr. Vance commanded, his voice sharp enough to slice through glass. "Sarah stays. In fact, under the explicit terms of your mother's estate, if Sarah is not present in that room, the meeting is canceled and no one receives a single cent." Eleanor's face flushed bright red, her mouth dropping open in utter disbelief. Julian's smug grin instantly vanished into pure panic. Reluctantly, my mother stepped aside, glaring at me with raw hatred as I brushed past her into the sleek, high-rise conference room. As we sat around the massive mahogany table, Eleanor quickly regained her composure, placing a manicured hand over Julian's. They assumed the properties were theirs. But Mr. Vance unsealed the thick folder, his expression unreadable. Mr. Vance cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the tense silence of the boardroom. He adjusted his glasses and began to read with clinical precision. "To my grandson, Julian," Mr. Vance recited, "I leave the full ownership of my commercial real estate portfolio, including the downtown storefronts and the main family estate." Eleanor let out a sharp gasp of delight, immediately wrapping her arms around Julian. "I knew it," she gloated, shooting me a triumphant, malicious look across the mahogany table. "I told you she knew who really mattered." Julian leaned back in his chair, folding his arms with an unbearable smirk, already celebrating his sudden multi-million-dollar windfall. However, Mr. Vance continued calmly, his voice slicing through their premature victory. These properties are transferred alongside all associated financial liabilities. This includes 6 years of unpaid back taxes, unrecorded private mortgages, and immediate city maintenance, liens amounting to precisely $3.2 million. The color drained from Julian's face in a fraction of a second. His smirk melted into horror. "Wait, what?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "$3 million in debt." "Precisely," Mr. Vance replied without blinking. "As primary beneficiary, you assume full personal liability. Failure to settle these debts within 30 days will trigger immediate foreclosure and personal bankruptcy." Eleanor jumped out of her chair, her diamond bracelets clattering violently against the table. "This is an outrage. My son cannot be held responsible for those debts. Give the assets to Sarah instead." Mr. Vance ignored her completely. He turned his gaze away from my pale, trembling brother and looked directly at me. Reaching into his leather briefcase, he pulled out a thick, navy blue leather folder adorned with a gold seal. "Now, regarding my granddaughter, Sarah," Mr. Vance read aloud, his voice softening just a fraction. "To Sarah, who offered me unconditional love without ever asking for a dime in return, I bequeath my private, offshore investment trusts, liquid capital accounts, and my primary personal residence, free and clear of all debts." Julian choked on his own breath. Eleanor's jaw dropped so low I thought it would shatter against the mahogany floor. Mr. Vance slid a handwritten letter across the polished table toward me. "Your grandmother left a note, Sarah," he said gently. She wrote, "I knew your mother and brother were leeching off my hard work. I let them trap themselves in the very greed they built. Use this fortune to build the life you truly deserve." I held the letter tightly, feeling the tears finally welling up in my eyes. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating before Eleanor erupted into hysterical shrieks. "You manipulated her," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You turned my mother against us. Sarah, you have to fix this right now. Use your trust fund to pay off Julian's $3 million. We are your family." Julian slid down into his chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The golden boy was completely crushed under the weight of his own financial recklessness. "Please, Sarah," he begged, his voice trembling with pathetic desperation. "If you don't pay those liens, I'll lose everything. They'll ruin my credit, take my car, maybe even send me to prison. You have millions now. What's $3 million to you?" I looked at the two people who had spent 6 long years treating me like absolute garbage, who had tried to lock me out in the rain just 30 minutes ago. For the first time in my life, I felt no fear, no guilt, and no desire to win their approval. "No," I said, my voice quiet, steady, and razor-sharp. Eleanor gasped as if I'd struck her. "What did you say?" I said no. I repeated, looking Julian dead in the eye. "You created those debts through your own greed and fraud, Julian. Grandma didn't trap you. You trapped yourself. You have 2 choices today. Accept the properties and face foreclosure, or sign them over to state liquidation and walk away with nothing. But I will not spend a single penny of Grandma's legacy to save you from your own consequences." They were utterly defeated. Greed had finally consumed itself. 6 months have passed since that unforgettable morning in Mr. Vance's office. Julian ultimately signed over the debt-ridden properties to state liquidation, losing his lavish lifestyle and luxury car in the process. Eleanor was forced to downsize to a modest apartment, her standing in high society completely ruined. As for me, I moved to a charming seaside cottage in Carmel. I used a portion of my inheritance to establish a foundation supporting young women escaping financial abuse, honoring my grandmother's legacy every single day. True justice didn't require raising my fists. I simply stood back and let greed destroy itself. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have paid off your brother's debts, or let him face the consequences? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to BT Revenge Tales for more stories.